Hey guys, Mike here. So another day and another new all-time high on the Nasdaq 100. Of course, you saw the Nasdaq was much stronger than the S&P 500, and you'll definitely understand why when I talk about it. But a couple things. One, I want to talk about the next big round of stimulus. I touched base on this Saturday, so I'm going to touch a little more on it today. And we're talking about it could be up $1-2 trillion worth of stimulus that nobody will really think about. The other one was another, if you want to call them a bear or whatever, capitulating and increasing their S&P target by quite a bit, all right, from 4,500 to 5,400. And that's the kind of stuff you see when we're in a market like we are right now. And then, of course, we'll go into a couple of things that are happening, like obviously Bitcoin's breaking out, Ethereum's breaking out. That leads to other stocks breaking out. You know, will that continue to push? Because it was Bitcoin and the Qs were basically in lockstep for a while there, and then it got kind of unhinged. And so we'll see, if that's more risk on in the market or not. But we'll look at that. But I did want to touch base, and I touched on this Saturday about this second mortgage deal, right? And some of you guys sent me some stuff, so I started looking back through it. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, you can see right here that it's going to be Freddie Mac. Obviously, they're going to sit here and come up with a new product. And currently, U.S. homeowners have about $32 trillion in equity, right? But a lot of people aren't tapping it. Only about $400 billion in home equity loans out there. And so what they want to do is basically say, okay, you can keep your existing rate on your first mortgage. And so if you want to take out a second mortgage instead of a HELOC or a cash out refi, then you can take out the second mortgage and you'll get the higher interest rate, not the original, which I was hoping it was going to be, which it is not. And that can, estimate unleash between $1 and $2 trillion, which of course will do what? Will go back into the economy, because I have one of the members talking about it now. They want to do some home, remodeling and stuff. So guess what that's going to do? Is going to go to Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever, right? Other people are going to try to pay off credit card debt that they're swamped in. What does that do? Now it frees up their credit cards to be what? Swipey, swipe, swipe, right? More stuff in the economy. And so if that happens, it's like this hidden stimulus out there that can continue to push things higher and higher. And the market loves that. It doesn't matter if it's bad for anything. It doesn't matter if it's bad for inflation, I guess. Who cares? Because you got to think, if you unleash that kind of demand, wouldn't it obviously hinder inflation to continue to come down? You don't think companies are going to be like, oh, they got all this money to spend now? Woo, great, And I'm going to touch base on buy now, pay later programs in another video, because I found out something about that which stunned me. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but it was pretty shocking. And so I'll go on that sometime this week when I can fit it in. But of course, maybe that's why, Morgan Stanley's Mike Wilson said, you know what, I'm throwing in this towel. I'm raising my forecast from like 4,500, I believe it was, now to 5,400 for 2024. And he pretty much was pretty staunch on what he was going to do. And now he's like, nope, going to go ahead and throw the towel in. And so maybe that's what finally made him say, forget about it. Let's just do this. We'll see what happens. But you see the S&P was lagging today, right? Compared to the Qs and stuff, right? And we tried to get above that midline, could not get above that midline. So that's what we're looking for. At least in this week, above that midline would be, super bullish. But the truth is, as long as you don't come down here and break that area down there, you're just looking to set a lower low at this point in time, right? You want to defend the previous all-time high, and those levels that got marked out at 52.63, 52.10. But again, as long as we're setting a higher low, then everything's pretty good. But when you look at the RSI, we'll look at the stochastic RSI. We're looking at this right here, and we can clearly see, one, we're not overbought yet, approaching. The stochastic RSI though is treading across, right? When's the last time we saw this? Right down here at the bottom of that channel, right? And you saw RSI is ramping up, right? And then gets an overbought, stays an overbought for basically what seemed like a week or two, right? Well, we still aren't there on the RSI, but what's happening? It's ramping up, right? So as long as don't cross down below that moving average I got on it, and stochastic doesn't start turning down, heading south, everything is fine at this point in time. One reason why is because you're starting to see the percentage of members with new 52-week highs, right? Starting to ramp back up. This is what you see when you start getting these rallies. You'll start getting these ramp back ups. And of course, where to bounce at, right at the zero line. So you get down to zero, but you can stay there for weeks. You got nowhere to go but up, right? And I say that jokingly, but that's just the truth. Now, when you look over IWM, what are we seeing? Higher highs, higher lows. And so as long as that continues, so what are we looking for? We're looking for a higher low again. And so it comes down the bottom of the channel. Right now, it's just kind of wedged right between the 2023 high and the old 2024 high right now. That's where we're at right now the last 2 to 3 days. So we'll see if it continues to tread water in there or not. But when we pull out, we look at a weekly. We're going to look at the bigger viewpoint of this right here. You can see the same thing. There's your high, there's your low, higher low, higher low, and now what we're looking for is a higher high, right? And so that's got to be the key to continue this drive up. And I always say, 210 is going to be easy to be pushing through. Not really. If it was, we'd already done it. Okay, so that is resistance. Again, we'll pull up some indicators here to look at this. Momentum right now is heading in the right direction. Like I said the other day, we get above usually 60, 65 on the stochastic. That's when you start to see some very big moves. It looks very similar to this right here. And when we go back down to the daily, you can see the stochastic up here in this area, starting to basically look like what I showed you before, kind of on the S&P, right? We're starting to get up here, stay in this little area, right, where momentum continues to push up, all right? And if risk goes on with crypto and things like that, then you can imagine small caps, right? That's a riskier deal. People might start pushing in the small caps once again, okay? And we pull up the RSI. You can see on this right here with the stochastic and the RSI is not overbought, right? Still has room to run, all right? That looks very similar to what happened back here. And so that's what we got to pay attention to is momentum stay up there. Does RSI continue to climb? That's all we need to continue the rally going. Now, what's interesting here, you look at the Dow, broke 40,000 for the first time last week, testing that level today, right, as it continues to climb up. But something that is not setting all-time highs and is kind of maybe telling us a different picture, and this is one you want to look for, especially when it comes to the economy, is the Dow Jones Transportation, right? This one right here, basically just stagnating sideways right here, consolidating, broke down below that trend line. Now that's resistance. So it's not setting higher highs, right? That resistance goes back to 2020. That's that trend line, right? It was using the support, then became resistance. And so this is what you're looking for. This can take weeks, months, but this is what you're looking for because the Dow Jones Transportation will break down much faster than any of the rest of them. And it's just a sign because that's the backbone of the country. That's how we get all our goods and stuff around, right? So if transportations are lagging quite a bit, this is what we got to watch out for. It can just bust to the upside and we don't have to worry about it, but I'm going to be keeping an eye on it, okay? It's kind of an early indicator. Now, Bitcoin, of course, is busting out here on certain news, especially for Ethereum we'll get into, but this is where we're waiting for that weekly stochastic RSI cross. I'd like to see it get above 20, 21 area right there to really confirm that. Again, it's not far, it doesn't have far to go to get to all-time highs, but when you get these stochastic RSI crosses, the bullish ones, you only get between 2 and 4 a year on the weekly chart. And so normally when it happens, you usually get a very nice run up. We'll have to see, of course, but when you look, especially on Ethereum, I posted this chart, I think it was last week, it was the 17th, I believe, and I was like, man, if there's a bullish setup here, I mean, look at Ethereum, right? And this falling wedge coming down into support of that trend line where it's bounced multiple times. Already had your bullish stochastic RSI cross right there. As we go to the weekly right here, you can see it. And so with that happening, and again, I wasn't even thinking about these ETFs and stuff, and that's what come out today, which of course got things ramping. You see that big candle now. So that has broke out again. I'm still waiting for, because again, this is a news candle, but we'll see if stochastic crosses that 20 line right there, continues up, and you can see that's what this is all about, right? We remember when Bitcoin got their ETF approvals, or actually got the wind, it might be approved, and then when it got approved, what it do? It dumped. Right, so don't think Ethereum is going to be any different. Where buy the rumor, sell the news event. That's pretty much what it's going to be probably. But we'll have to see because that could take a long time to get approved. But we see what Bitcoin did, right? So it made it rally early before the halving. Was those ETFs, and so again, you'll see the crypto stocks, right? Coin is starting to get a weekly bullish stochastic RSI cross. You can see it breaking above that trend line right there. And so we'll see if this is going to continue, or again, this is a news event, or it will sell back up tomorrow. But if it does get above this area right here, like 225, 235, somewhere in that area, definitely going to be moving higher and probably pretty dang fast. So something to watch out for on that one. If it gets above that, obviously you're going to be looking at 275 as your first target, and then of course the big one to go into the summertime if this is a real breakout for crypto, around 370, 372 right there by July or August. Now, Pan W, another victim right here, ends up not having bad earnings at all, really. But it sells down. Shocker there. I'm sure Nancy, maybe she already sold her Pan W. Who knows? But again, I think it was the guidance that got it. Doesn't matter if you do a double beat or anything. I think maybe this big boys didn't like the guidance. So, of course, they decided to punish it down. As we talked about, if this sells down, like it did on the last earnings, what to be looking for here. And we can see as we pull out, get rid of the news here. And look what happened last time. We end up getting crushed, right? And that trend line is going to be key right there, as you can see. So this drop anywhere near as much as that one. And again, a lot of it got bought up at first and initially when it happened. But make sure you have extended trading hours on at the bottom, ETH, right? As you can see, it's coming right at that trend line right there. Most likely we get a bounce, got multiple bounces. If it breaks that, that's a whole different story. But again, it kind of reminds you of Meta, right? And the reason why I say you have to have the ETH on, the extended trading hours, is to see what happens in after hours, to see if you hit a big time trend line right there. Because if that breaks, obviously you're going to be looking around like 285 is going to be your first stop, and then around 265. So watch those levels if it continues to sell off going into the after hours and tomorrow as well when we open up and stuff. And again, I'll circle it down there for you to watch. Because if you weren't looking at that on Meta, you would have never known when Meta sold down. We pulled that one up. You would have never known it came down to that trend line support area and bounced, right? You would just be looking at half the picture. And so if you pull it up right there, that's ETH we're on right there, and you can see it came down and support, a big wick right there, and that trend line and bounced, right? But if you're on regular trading hours, you're like, I'm still waiting for it to come into support and hit the trend line, right? And so you would have missed it. So, keep that in mind. Now, if you're dead set on playing Nvidia earnings, which I believe they report Wednesday, you can see obviously why the Qs did better than the SPY did today, right? Because here's semiconductors just rolling, right? Nvidia was rolling, so everything else rolls right along with it. If it does good and it spikes up on earnings, the rest of them are going to do the same. If it spikes down, they probably drag everything else down with them. And so instead of trying to play the Nvidia, which has extremely high premiums and is very expensive, and they're expecting a 10% move in either direction. And again, if you buy just straight call or straight put and it doesn't reach the expected move, you're most likely going to get crushed, all right? Even though you were right on the move, what direction you thought it was going to be. So, maybe you can play Soxel, SOX, something like that, even the Qs, for example, because obviously, when we look at this right here, you can see how XLK did. So again, you don't have to worry about, being crushed and everything on theta and stuff. And so maybe that's another thing to think about if you're just dead set on playing earnings. More people lose money on earnings plays than actually making stuff because of that, even if they're right on the move and stuff. So just give me some options on that one. Now, if you look at earnings, obviously we have Zim, which has been on fire, the transports, Macy's, Lowe's, AutoZone, XP, Lee Auto got crushed this morning. Toll Brothers is a home builder right there. And then again, no real news, but you will have the Treasury Secretary and a lot of FOMC speakers coming out and running their mouths, right? So no news to even worry about until we get into Wednesday. And it seems they're really just painting the same narrative of, we kind of see inflation coming down, we kind of don't, higher for longer, blah, 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 whatever. And the market's in a whole another zone, just not even listening to them, completely tuning them out, right? The 10-year, which I'll bring in tomorrow's chart or whatever, but that one right there was actually, even though it went green, the Qs didn't care if it was going green or not, but it was coming into some resistance, so we'll have to see if it gets rejected there or not. Again, it fell out of that channel, and once it did, the market was like, yay, party on, let's do this. So, we'll see how it goes. We'll put your predictions for Nvidia earnings on Wednesday. What do you think is going to happen tomorrow? We're going to be red or green, and normally you'll see that when there's no big kind of news coming out where the market may just consolidate sideways. You get a little manipulation here and there, but again, it was all about tech today, and so the market continues to churn and grind higher. So please hit the like and subscribe button on your way out, and I will see you guys tomorrow.